We continue with question period. I'd just like to point out to members that the chair was generous with many members from all parties today who had gone over their 60 seconds. Just so that we could start on time, I'm going to ask all members to be mindful to try to get their declarations within 60 seconds so we can start right away. The honourable member from Kamloops, Caribou Thompson.
Mr. Speaker, violent criminals first, victims second. That is the Prime Minister's motto. Sexual psychopaths like Paul Bernardo and Terry Lynn McClintock get to play tennis and live comfortably in lower security while victims serve psychological life sentences. This happened because of Bill C-83, the Prime Minister saying that everybody in jail should be at the lowest security possible. This begs the question, why does the Prime Minister prefer criminals over victims?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, our colleague knows very well that's not the case. He knows that all members of this House should properly be concerned about victims of crime. I think all members of this House should also be judicious to continually repeat the names of Canada's most heinous criminals in this House. We think on this side, Mr. Speaker, that's also disrespectful for victims. These heinous criminals remain in federal prisons where they belong, and our government will always stand up for victims, including not repeating the names of heinous criminals over and over again in this House.
And ask the honourable member from Lakelands, please, to not participate unless they're recognized by the chair. The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
I'll say a name, Tori Stafford. One of her relatives wrote to me about what that minister just said yesterday. He said something similarly insensitive. And if he were to read the note I got, I think he'd be on his feet withdrawing. Mr. Speaker, these NDP Liberals want to give a temporary tax trick while permanently raising the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. Here's the choice. The NDP Liberals want to remove the GST on a few things. Conservatives want to axe the carbon tax on everything permanently. Will this Prime Minister call a carbon tax election so we can axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Speaker, today is a tremendous day in the House of Commons. Why? Because we're giving a tax break to Canadians so they can buy essential things. Groceries, snacks, kids' clothing, kids' boots, diapers, all tax-free. That means starting on December 14th, buying beer or wine to enjoy with your friends or family, going to a restaurant, grabbing some takeout, all tax-free for the holidays. The best question that Conservative member can ask his leader is whether this time he'll be unmuzzled and unleashed to actually vote for an affordability measure in this chamber.
The honourable member from Kamloops, Thompson Caribou.
Mr. Speaker, this is nothing more than the arsonist pouring more inflationary fuel on the fire. Just this last May, the Prime Minister said this: you send out more cash, quote, inflation goes up by exactly that amount, end quote. Here's our common sense solution: axe the tax for everyone, forever. Cheaper gas, groceries, home heating, and everything that's shipped. Now that's a Christmas present everybody wants. So will the NDP Liberals call an election so we can axe the tax?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I'm delighted to hear the member opposite talking about Christmas, because that's what we should be talking about, having a festive season. His leader, unfortunately, was talking about trickery. I thought he was still stuck in Halloween mode. But here we are talking about the festive season and what we're going to do to make it better for Canadians. We're going to ensure that the toys they buy their children are GST-free. We're going to ensure the Christmas tree they put up in their home to gather around is also tax-free. That's something that I would think every member of this chamber should get behind. But yet, to date, just to this point, we have no idea whether the Conservatives will actually support an affordability measure that helps Canadians for Christmas. Will they?
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, Quebecers are not naive. After 9 minister of this Prime Minister, prices are up, rents are up by 33%, as are mortgages. The Prime Minister knows full well that this temporary GST break won't do anything in terms of affordability. Quebecers want permanent relief. And this is why they want a new Conservative government. When will he trigger an election to make life more affordable for all Canadians forever? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, it's a great day for Quebecers and Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Today, Canadians have understood that their Liberal government is here for them. The first thing that Canadians said to us, Mr. Speaker, is about affordability. And this is what we're presenting today. A GST break on everyday items that family use. And we will be here to help workers. But the real question for people watching us at home today, is the Conservative leader going to allow these members to help Canadians, yes or no? That's the real question in the minds of Canadians. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister, supported by the Bloc, it kept in place by the NDP, is just tricking people. He's sending them more benefits, but inflation is going up for around the same amount. After this period, these rebates will disappear and everything will go back to normal. When will the PM trigger an election to cut taxes forever? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, we don't need an election for this. We already did this for Canadians. The answer is clear, Mr. Speaker. On that side of the House, you have the Conservatives that are obstructing systematically the House. And, Mr. Speaker, Canadians, we'll see if they have the guts to stand up for Canadians, because what we're proposing today is a measure for affordability, helping people in need at Christmas, to help workers in the spring. Mr. Speaker, will the Conservatives have the heart to help Canadians once and for all? Before the Honourable Member for La Prairie rises to speak, I'd just like to remind everyone, I think the member for New Westminster Burnaby shouldn't take the floor without being recognized by the chair. Thank you. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The last report from Quebec's French language commissioner was made public yesterday. French continues to regress, and not surprisingly, the commissioner accuses Ottawa of contributing to its decline. Go to any federal department in Quebec, and you'll hear the language of work isn't French for the federal government. Ottawa gives bilingual jobs to unilingual Anglophones. Ottawa ignores its obligations to translate documents into French. And at the end of the day, Ottawa doesn't give a damn about French. Well, when Ottawa doesn't respect French, it's all of Quebec that isn't respected. Does he understand that? The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. As the new Minister of Official Languages, I'm looking forward to working with the Quebec government. Protecting and promoting our both official languages is an absolute priority for our government. And that is why we implemented C13, and we did make historical investment in an action plan, $1.3 billion over 5 years. Mr. Speaker, our priority is always on official languages, and I'd be looking forward to working with my counterparts. Thank you. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. The French Language Commissioner recommends that the Quebec government question the Government of Canada about the effects of its activities on the status of French in the Gatineau region. This means that Quebec must intervene and tell Ottawa to stop anglicizing Gatineau and stop anglicizing Quebec. This government is hurting French, its future, it's hurting the Quebec nation, its identity, it's harming Quebec. When are they going to stop hitting us over the head, hitting our language, and start respecting Quebec's common language, French? The Honourable Minister of Veterans and Official Languages. Mr. Speaker, I'm offended to hear my honourable colleague say that there are minority settings in New Brunswick that is hampering the promotion of French in this country. I don't agree. I'm proud to be part of a government that has made historical investment in official languages, and I'll continue to work with the province of Quebec to make sure that the necessary investments will be made. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Rosemount-La Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, for weeks now, the NDP has been putting pressure on the government to give people a break who are having a hard time paying their bills. We proposed a plan to remove the GST from essential products. The Liberals gave in to this pressure, but as usual, they only did things by halves. We won on groceries and children's clothing, but only for 2 months. The needs won't disappear in February. Do the Liberals understand that this assistance must be extended and made permanent for families who are struggling? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, the NDP is just waking up. It's Christmas time, and now they're waking up. But we have understood for quite some time that the main concern for Canadians is affordability. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, that today we're presenting a strong measure, a measure that will help families. Why? Because at Christmas time, that's when they really need a hand. They have needs for children, for groceries, and for restaurants. On the side of the House, the Liberals will always fight for affordability, will always stand up for families, and be here to say yes to Canadians in need.
The honourable member from Vancouver Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians need relief. While CEOs are raking in billions in profits, families are getting gouged on things like their heating, cell phone bills, and at the grocery store. Now, the NDP has called on the Liberals to remove the GST on life essentials to give Canadians a break. Instead, this government responded with a partial version of what the NDP proposed. Liberals let people down, Conservatives want cuts. Why won't the Liberals give Canadians a real break by permanently removing the GST on life's essentials?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board, Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, it's tax-free on essential goods for the holidays. That's great news for Canadians, Mr. Speaker. Also supports for Canadian workers, 18 million Canadian workers getting cash back, Mr. Speaker. More good news for Canadians. On this side of the House, we're fighting for affordability measures. On the other side of the House, what do we got? Partisan games, Mr. Speaker. How can they claim to speak for Canadians when they can't even speak for themselves?
Order. The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Hide your wallets. This Liberal NDP Costly coalition is back to break the bank. After doubling housing costs, doubling the national debt, and doubling food bank usage, they want to quadruple the carbon tax scam. The leader of the NDP is too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to Liberal interests to fight for the people. That's why he's willing to keep this corrupt Liberal government in power, because he has pension tension. Why not give Canadians real relief? Call a carbon tax election now, so common sense Conservatives can axe the tax for good.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government is giving a tax break to all Canadians. That means that there's not going to be GST, Mr. Speaker, on essential goods, on everyday goods, Mr. Speaker, like groceries, like toys for the holidays, like kids' clothing, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we know that Canadians are looking forward to this tax break. We know that it is done responsibly. It'll be done for 2 months, Mr. Speaker. The question on everybody's mind is that Conservative member checked with his leader to see if he'll be able to vote for a tax break, or maybe the leader won't let him do that.
No holds barred.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
Instead of a temporary inflationary pause, why don't we give Canadians a real break? Call a carbon tax election now, so Canadians can send this costly coalition on a permanent holiday. Because a common sense Conservative government will axe the tax on gas, groceries, and home heating and bring home lower prices and powerful paychecks. Let's do it. Let's call a carbon tax election, so common sense Conservatives can axe the tax on everything for everyone for good.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, this week the media reported that the Conservative leader is preventing the members of Parliament from the Conservative Party of advocating for their citizens, of advocating for housing investments, Mr. Speaker. Well, this Liberal government is there for Canadians. We are instituting a tax holiday, Mr. Speaker, a tax break for Canadians when they need it most. The question on everybody's mind is, are Conservative members going to be allowed to represent their communities allowed to represent vulnerable Canadians and vote in favor of a tax break, or are they going to need to follow their Conservative leader?
And ask members again to not take the floor when they're not recognized. And I've asked a member from South Shore St. Margaret's on several occasions this week, and I'm also asked a member from Calgary Signal Hill, please, not to take the floor. We all want to hear the question that is coming from the honourable member from Northumberland, Peter. Excuse me, I'm going to ask ministers, please, to keep colleagues. The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Well, Canadians don't have to wonder anymore. The Cost of Living Crisis Coalition, well, they never really left us. Just a few months ago, though, it was the NDP leader who said these Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. I couldn't agree more, Mr. Speaker, but today he flip-flopped. He announced his full confidence in this Liberal Prime Minister. If this coalition is so sure of themselves, their poverty-inducing agenda, why not go ahead, go to Canadians, and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. Let me get this straight. The Conservative members of Parliament talk about reducing poverty and talk about helping Canadians through affordability challenges, but when we have a real thing on the table that's going to cut the GST on essential goods, they have to listen to their leader and oppose cutting taxes for Canadians. But, Mr. Speaker, this is just par for the course for the Conservatives. We know that the supposed guy that fights for freedom of speech doesn't want his MPs to speak freely. The real question is will he allow them to freely vote for Canadians and this tax cut? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, how can Canadians be reasonably expected to see that a costly coalition that got us into this economic quagmire could possibly see the way out? This Prime Minister has increased food costs by 35%. He's increased the cost of gasoline by over 50%. He's increased the cost of mortgage and housing by over 70%. Simple question, when will this Prime Minister allow for real chance, real opportunity, real hope by calling a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
A GST being removed on essential goods for the next couple of months, and the Conservatives want to vote against that. As we go into the holidays and families are thinking about buying toys and getting Christmas trees, and we are offering a GST removal on those very things, the Conservatives say, no, don't stand up for Canadians, don't help them through these tough times. Mr. Speaker, that's just par for the course and a pattern of behavior. And when you look in the dictionary, it actually starts with an H and ends with an hypocrisy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Levis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, while the Liberals removed the GST on beer and wine for the holiday season, hoping to make people forget how bad they are, Canada's food banks don't have time to celebrate. This Liberal government's priorities are purely electoral. Mr. Speaker, does the Liberal government understand that Canadians want permanent tax cuts and not just for the holiday season?
Then I have
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We are granting a tax break on groceries, on children's toys, Mr. Speaker, on children's clothing. This means that as of December 14th, a restaurant or a wine or a bottle amongst friends will be free of GST. This Conservative member, which is rising today, did he check with his Conservative leader? Is he allowed to vote in favour of this measure, Mr. Speaker? The honourable member for Levis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, child poverty has increased in 97% of ridings across the country. It's now 1 in 5 children living in poverty under this Liberal government. instead of inviting us to have a glass of beer, here's a common sense solution to help families. Abolish the carbon tax for everyone, forever. This means cheaper gas, cheaper groceries, and cheaper heating during our Liberal winters. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister call an election now? The Honourable Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
For Mr. Speaker is a tax break through the winter, through the holidays for Canadians across the country. I had the chance this morning to talk with a dad in my riding, Chris, who told me how much this is going to save him on diapers, Mr. Speaker. The basics that families need day in and day out. We're moving forward with a tax holiday to support them in these expensive times. I think the question that members should be asking is, will their leader allow them to support this for Canadians?
The Honourable Member for Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia. At a time when the federal government is being asked to increase its border staffing levels in preparation for a new wave of migration, it comes as a shock to learn that Ottawa is reducing its service hours at boarding crossings. On Tuesday, the Border Service Officers Union also expressed concern, saying at a time when all eyes are on the border, the agency is showing a blatant lack of vision in proceeding with this service reduction. To claim that the border is safer if crossings are closed more often is simply nonsense. Mr. Speaker, what does this minister have to say to concerned border services officers? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, for several months now, even more than a year, we have been working with U.S. authorities to find the best way to harmonize hours at some border crossings, some of the secondary ones. This will do two things, Mr. Speaker. This will, in the case of someone who comes to the Canadian border and who does not have the right to access Canada, they have the right to go back to a U.S. border open, which will be open, and this will allow the government to reassign agents to other crossings. The Honourable Member for Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia. It sends a very bad message to cut hours at border crossings, except for the smugglers. It suggests that the border could be even less watertight than it is today. The message Ottawa should be sending is to deploy resources in support of agents and the RCMP. Tracking smugglers at the longest land border is a game of cat and mouse, and when the cat's away, the mice will play. When Quebec sends the Quebec police to take over border management from the federal government, is it really time to cut back on border services? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. On the contrary, Mr. Speaker, it's the time to support our RCMP and services and border services to work with. We've always done with authorities, with police in Quebec. It's a joint effort between Canada's law enforcement and our U.S. partners, and that's exactly what our government has done since the beginning. We are going to reverse the conservative cuts with respect to the RCMP and border services, and we're going to continue to invest more to ensure that they have the necessary resources to do their important work. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Loire. Citizens living on the border in Salaberry-sur-Loire and in Châteauguay-Lacolle all know that smugglers are already one step ahead of the federal government. Since Trump's return, people are even more worried. The cuts in hours at CBSA does nothing to reassure citizens, and at the time when the RCMP must double its efforts and the federal government is being asked to support it, does this government realize how contradictory and worrisome it is to see border crossings reducing their services? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, what is not contradictory is to work with our American counterparts, like we've always done, to support the RCMP and the people who work at CBSA so that they can do that work that Canadians expect of them. And this is exactly what we are doing. I'd like to reassure my colleague, if some border crossings do have reduced hours, it's obviously in cooperation with our American counterparts. Some will remain in Quebec regions to support emergency situations at other border crossings.
The NDP leader said the Liberals were too weak, too selfish, too beholden to corporate interest to fight for Canadians. But it only took him 2 months to renege on his word, reaffirm his commitment to the Prime Minister and his costly coalition, and keep Canadians in carbon tax hell. Today he reaffirmed that he is committed and showed his confidence in this Prime Minister in quadrupling the carbon tax on farmers, on food, and fuel. How about a common sense solution? Axe the carbon tax on everything, for everyone, forever. Will the Prime Minister Canadians and call it carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, we are delivering real relief for Canadians, and it is the Conservatives who are trying to now make life more expensive when they have an opportunity to help Canadians with the high cost of living. But this is unsurprising, Mr. Speaker, because it's from the same party whose leader was delivering donuts to people out here who were protesting, and yet this morning had protesters removed by police from his home, Mr. Speaker. The guy who cares about freedom of speech certainly doesn't like it when people oppose his views. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Mr. Speaker, it's not good when protesters go to anyone's house, not just the Leader of the Opposition.
I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Foothills to start again. The Honourable Member.
At a time when 2 million Canadians are forced to a food bank in a single month, when food inflation in Canada is 36% higher than it is in the United States, and a quarter of Canadians are going, 25% of children are going to school hungry, the House Leader of the Liberal government is making this a partisan thing about protesters at the Leader's house, when they should be disgusted that protesters are going to any house of any Member of Parliament. I would hope she'll stand up and apologize for those comments.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, I'm actually really glad to hear that from my honourable colleague, because no protester should be in front of anyone's house, except when the convoy was here, they cheered them on in front of so many residents in Ottawa.
Exactly.
And
In my residence.
They cheered on
My residence.
who prevented them from going to the hospital, who prevented them from going to the grocery store, who prevented them from ambulances arriving at their homes. Mr. Speaker, there is a double standard on that side of the House, and we cannot stand for that.
See you later.
Full member from Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, despite the foolishness that's been going on, there's a crisis that exists in Canada.
That's not nice.
Member from St. Albert, Edmonton, please control himself in this place or take himself outside of this room. I'm going to invite the honourable member from Cumberland. Everyone, relax. The honourable member from Cumberland Colchester will start again.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker. Despite the messy split in September, it looks like Canada's NDP Liberal woke power couple has gotten back together again. And they're coming for Canadian hard-earned money. Canadians are not fooled by their temporary tax trickery. 53% more Nova Scotians are using food banks than 5 years ago. Almost 40,000 Nova Scotians are visiting food banks every month, and 12,000 of them are children. Here's a better and common sense solution. Axe the carbon tax on everything for everyone forever. Cheaper gas, groceries, and home heating, and everything that's shipped. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if that member and any of the members of the Conservative Party of Canada actually cared about affordability for Canadians, they would support this measure to remove the GST on essential items that we are putting forward that is going to help Canadians over the coming months get through these challenging times. But, Mr. Speaker, this is a pattern of behaviour. They say one thing, they do another, whether that is with regards to supporting Canadians through affordability challenges, muzzling their members of parliament who try to speak up on behalf of their constituents, or taking away, removing protesters by police that don't agree with them. Mr. Speaker, they are completely disrespectful to Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu, the former Minister Gallant, and Hamas leader Deif for crimes against humanity and war crimes. Palestinian and Israeli civilians have faced horrific violence at the hands of the Netanyahu government and Hamas. Unlike many other ICC countries, this Prime Minister has not been clear, and Canadians deserve an answer. Will the government enforce these arrest warrants and ensure that the victims of these war crimes see the justice that they deserve?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We respect the independence of the International Criminal Court. We will abide by all the regulations and rulings of the International Criminal Court. That is just who we are as Canadians. But let me be clear, all parties must abide by international law. We also know that an immediate ceasefire is urgently needed. Hostages must be released, Hamas must lay down its arms, more aid must get into Gaza, and the violence must stop. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Windsor West.
Mr. Speaker, we may have another price-fixing scandal in Canada. This time it's not bread but potatoes. Allegedly, two of Canada's big food companies have been colluding together to jack up the price of frozen potato products. Costs of these products have shot up by 40% over the last 2 years. CEOs jacked up the prices and gouged Canadians. Liberals are letting families down while Conservatives cater to these CEOs who fund their election campaigns. Will the Liberals investigate this potential price-fixing French fry gate by greedy CEOs?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, we'll take no lessons from the NDP on that, Mr. Speaker. In fact, it was a Liberal government, Mr. Speaker, that reformed the Competition Act in this country. Now, Mr. Speaker, thanks to our government, consumers at home know that we're going to have their back, Mr. Speaker. We have given new powers to the Competition Commissioner to investigate. We expect him to use all his power and to make sure that we restore competition in this country at every single time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Kingston and the Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that the last couple of years have been particularly challenging, and although inflation is continuing to come down, households haven't particularly started to feel that. That is why we introduced very important measures today to provide relief to Canadians. It is yet to be seen whether or not the Conservative leader will allow his MPs to vote in favour of what is so important for their constituents. We do know that he prevented them from talking about housing money and also from continually muzzling them from representing their communities. I'm wondering if the President of the Treasury Board can help inform Conservatives why it's so important to vote in favour of this legislation.
Hear, hear. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, diapers, groceries, prepared meals, essential goods, what do these things have in common? They're all tax-free for the holidays, Mr. Speaker. Well, that's great news for Canadians, as well as cash back coming for Canadian workers, 18 million Canadian workers. On the other side of the House, what do we got? Filibustering, obstructing, playing partisan games. It is time for the Conservatives to get serious about supporting Canadians. On this side of the House, every day is a great day to fight for Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
The Liberals are trying to hide from Canadians that the company owned by the disgraced Liberal from Edmonton Centre is still eligible to get government contracts. Now, the Prime Minister may believe that his former and failed employment minister is the victim, but the real victims, of course, are Indigenous people and the people defrauded by his company. So to this point, the Prime Minister has failed to ban Global Health Imports from bidding on contracts with the Government of Canada. Will he stand up and ban them today?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have been very clear in this House that that company was not on the list, and Indigenous procurement is for Indigenous people. But, Mr. Speaker, this is an attempt by the Conservative members of Parliament to distract from what is really good news for Canadians today. And the fact that we are going to give a break on GST for essential goods over the coming months, and we are going to support 18.6 million Canadians with a Canada Working benefit. Mr. Speaker, the question remains, will the Leader of the Opposition allow Conservative MPs to vote for it?
Exactement. The Honourable Member from Leeds Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
So let's get this straight. The disgraced former minister, the member for Edmonton Centre, a Liberal, started a pandemic profiteering business, and that business lied about being Indigenous to get government contracts. They're under investigation by the Edmonton Police Service for fraud, and this Liberal government is still allowing them to bid on government contracts. Now, they're saying they're not on the list for approved Indigenous-owned businesses. But what about for any other type of contract? Why is this Prime Minister determined to protect Liberal insiders, and why won't he ban his disgraced former minister from having these contracts?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I said, that company is not on the list for Indigenous procurement. But yet again, Mr. Speaker, what we see from the Conservatives opposite is they don't want to talk about the important affordability measures that we have presented today. They don't want to talk about the fact that they are going to vote against and oppose a GST break for millions of Canadians when it comes to essential goods. They don't want to talk about the fact that they are going to oppose a $250 benefit for working Canadians, Mr. Speaker. They're just not there for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, this government says that they support women's equality and reconciliation, but their actions show anything but. This Prime Minister was very quick to fire the first female Indigenous Minister of Justice because she wasn't willing to lie for him. Yet it took him weeks to fire a Minister of Employment, a white male, who faked his Indigenous identity. So why was it so easy to fire one but not the other?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, what's so encouraging, and I would say it's not often that I find something encouraging from the Conservative Party, but what is encouraging to hear is their staunch support for Indigenous procurement. And I agree with the Conservative Party. We have to work hard to make sure that Indigenous businesses are the ones that actually profit from Indigenous priorities. And so I want to thank the Conservative Party for keeping their eye on making sure that this country ensures Indigenous economic success. We'll do that together.
The Honourable the Honourable Member from Calgary. To err is human. The Honourable Minister from... Colleagues, the Honourable Member from Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, this is not real reconciliation. It took weeks for this Prime Minister to fire the Minister of Employment, to allow him to resign. Real reconciliation, according to the former Minister of Justice, would have been to fire that Minister of Employment immediately. She says she's left to watch white people play Ancestry Wheel of Fortune. She says it's shameful and it's destructive. So why did it take the Prime Minister so long to fire the Minister of Employment when it was so easy to fire a real female Indigenous minister?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous...
Great, Mr. Speaker. I see so many questions on Indigenous priorities in this House, and I want to thank the member opposite and hope that she will work with her party to ensure the safe passage of Bill C-61, a Clean Drinking Water Act for First Nations that's been co-developed with First Nations in this country. Mr. Speaker, there are many opportunities that the party opposite can support Indigenous priorities, and that's certainly one of them.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Back to the fraud at CRA. Yesterday in committee, the minister went on the attack, but get this, not against fraudsters, against whistleblowers. It's crazy. She joined in CRA's witch hunt against its own employees. But without them, we would never have known taxpayers were robbed of over $100 million this year. Without them, we would have never known that CRA had hidden 30,000 cases of personal information theft from the Privacy Commissioner. Without them, we never would have known because CRA was covering it all up. Why is the minister an accomplice in the attack on whistleblowers?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Revenue.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Speaker.
Must be denounced, and I have to say that our minister and our government has supported Bill C-290 from that party's private members bill. There are situations where we are not able to talk about issues, specifically with respect to Section 241 in the Income Tax Act. But there are obligations and there are ways in which we are able to have whistleblowers report what they need to within the CRA, and we are constantly working on these issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. If we need whistleblowers, it's because this government never does anything until their problems make the headlines. It's thanks to whistleblowers that we know about the fraud at CRA, which the agency's been hiding at every opportunity. It's thanks to whistleblowers we know about the extent of foreign interference. It's thanks to whistleblowers there was a crackdown on sexual misconduct in the military that a Liberal minister swept under the rug. The problem isn't whistleblowers, it's Liberals hiding information. It's in their DNA. Will the minister stop attacking whistleblowers and start going after the fraudsters? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I think that the challenge here is whistleblowers. As I said earlier, there are ways within the CRA that people are able to report whatever misconduct that they see within the CRA. But I think the question really is, how do we protect whistleblowers? We have obviously supported Bill C-290 from the Bloc Québécois. I wonder if we can support the Conservative Party and their whistleblowing situation that's going on right now.
The honourable member from Battle River, Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the disgraced Liberal MP from Edmonton Centre resigned from Cabinet, but as of today, his shady company GHI is still eligible to bid on government contracts, despite the member admitting that he lied about his heritage to get dollars earmarked for Indigenous businesses in the past. That's on top of being embroiled in conflicts of interest and even allegations of being connected with international drug busts. The government House Leader still has not made clear whether or not that company has been banned from bidding on contracts with the government. Can she give a straight answer here today?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is clear is that the company in question was not listed as an Indigenous company. What is clear is that the company never received a contract as an Indigenous company. And Mr. Speaker, we have taken many steps going forward to provide for modernization of procurement and transparency and openness, and we're working towards supporting Canadians and supporting the Indigenous community who require our support, and we'll be there for them all the way through. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, what do 5 Range Rovers, 2 Porsche Cayennes, a post office box co-owned by a suspected drug trafficker, a warehouse full of medical supplies destroyed by arson, millions of dollars in fraud, and a company falsely claiming to be Indigenous all have in common? The Liberal member for Edmonton Centre. Now, the Prime Minister continues to stand by his MP. He sees nothing wrong with these scandals. It begs the question, if all this corruption and scandal isn't enough to fire a minister, how corrupt do you need to be to get fired by this Prime Minister?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, that question has been answered. One question that I have is how far the Conservatives are going to go. Conservative leader wants to take away $10 a day childcare from Canadian mothers. He wants to take away dental care subsidies from our seniors. He wants to take away 750,000 new construction bills from Canadians who want to buy their first home, Mr. Speaker. Now the newest policy of the Conservative leader is to take away the tax break that the Liberal government announced today for all Canadians. When is it going to end, Mr. Speaker? Under this Conservative leader, he's going to make life more expensive.
The honourable member from Sturgeon River, Parkland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, now that the Prime Minister's minister in charge of Jasper's recovery has resigned under a cloud of suspicion, who's going to oversee the rebuilding of this beautiful community? Will it be the radical Environment Minister, who ignored warnings for years from forestry experts that the dead forest around Jasper was a powder keg waiting to blow? Will the Prime Minister assure Canadians that he won't put the radical minister who failed the community by allowing it to burn in the first place in charge of Jasper and towns like it again?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
This member should be ashamed of the previous government's record in the protection of Jasper, Mr. Speaker. Do you know how much they invested in 2011 for fire protection in Jasper? Zero. Do you know how much they invested in 2012? Zero. Do you know how much they invested in 2013? Zero. 2014? Zero. 2015? Zero. We've invested more than $60 million in fire prevention in Jasper. They did absolutely nothing.
Order! Order! Order!
We're climbing on the Premier's roof in 2011. No, 2006.
The honourable member for Mississauga East, Cooksville.
Well, Mr. Speaker, while the Leader of the Opposition silences and strong-arms his caucus into being his mouthpiece in their communities, our government is listening to Canadians. What are our neighbours telling me, Mr. Speaker? That while inflation is easing, life can still be challenging. They've also told me that our government has been there to support them through difficult times, but they're worried about the added costs of the upcoming holiday season. So, Mr. Speaker, could the Minister of Justice, the Attorney General, please tell us what our government is doing to put more money in the pockets of Canadians?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
I want to thank my colleague for that important question. We are starting off the new year on the right foot. Today we announced we are giving all Canadians a tax break by exempting the GST and HST on things Canadians care about so they can buy essentials like groceries, snacks, and kids' clothing tax-free. We're also introducing the Working Canadians rebate, which will put $250 directly back into the pockets of working Canadians, 18 million plus working Canadians. The question for this chamber is, will the members opposite have the courage to stand up to their leader, to free themselves from this gag order that he's imposed upon them and come out in favor of the tax break?
I'm going to ask the honourable member from New Westminster Burnaby for the second time today to please not take the floor when not recognized by the chair. L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Charlebourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Journal de Montréal newspaper reported this morning that a woman on Montreal's North Shore had her car stolen twice, and to add insult to injury, her insurance premiums went up over $7,000 a year. What's more, she was required to install the tag tracking system or she would have been denied coverage. Once again, it's the victims who end up paying for the Prime Minister's incompetence. His inaction on public safety speaks louder than his long, boring speeches on the subject. When will he wake up? The Honourable Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, we are concerned, like all members here, when we hear stories like that. And that's precisely why we've been working with the police, whether it's the Montreal Police, the Quebec Provincial Police, or other police forces in Quebec or other provinces. We've transferred hundreds of millions of dollars to support this important work. We increased funding for the RCMP, for staff, and we will continue to fight circumstances that are wholly unacceptable, like the ones my colleague just described. The honourable member. Well, to add to that, we learned this morning, for the second time in 24 hours, car thieves deliberately drove into the police who were trying to stop them in Montreal's Côte-des-Neiges area. One of the three criminals, Abdurrahman Tabyab Ali, was already awaiting trial on 3 separate cases for vehicle theft, accessory after the fact, forcible confinement, armed assault, robbery, breaking and entering, and death threats. How many women have to be assaulted or how many police officers killed before the Prime Minister cracks down on these criminals? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General. I'd like to thank the member for the question, not just for the opportunity to point out the facts, but also to say that what we've seen in Quebec with CBSA is a decrease of car thefts in Quebec by 48%. What the member opposite raises is important because it has to do with the administration of justice provincially by Quebec's courts. Do we have enough police officers? Do we have enough justices of the peace in the right place? Do we have room in jails? Those are important questions that should be asked of Mr. Legault.
The honourable member from Coast of Bay Central Notre Dame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 9 years, these NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, crime, and corruption. Last week, I attended a town hall on crime in Somerford, Notre Dame Bay, where the RCMP were also present. Residents told them that it's gotten so bad that they're sleeping with guns next to their beds. The RCMP basically said that their hands are tied by this Liberal, soft-on-crime justice system. So will the Prime Minister call an election and let the people have their say on whether his crime record is good or bad?
Yeah. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, the concerns about community safety are concerns that touch all of us in every community. What I would say with respect to the combat against gun violence in our communities right around this country is look at the Liberal record. What we've done is we've put a ban on assault rifles. What we've done is we put a freeze on handguns. Most importantly, we are investing on our borders to interdict the traffic of arms between different countries, particularly on our southern border. That's important for keeping Canadians safe, and that was in place of investments that have been cut by the previous government. That's the Liberal record. I would hope that the Conservatives will get behind basic community safety.
The Honourable Member for Dorval, Lachine, LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, this week we announced a major new investment to accelerate housing construction in Quebec. The Conservative leader has had a rough few weeks because of the scandal he caused with his plan to rip up this deal with Quebec. Can the Minister of Economic Development tell us more about how our government is helping to build more housing for Quebecers? Thank you very much. The Honourable Minister of Tourism and Economic Development for Quebec. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for that question. You know, the devil's in the detail. The Conservative leader's proposal hides some dangerous housing details, eliminating social and affordable housing in Quebec, muzzling members who advocate for their communities, cutting the $92 million in new funding to accelerate housing construction in Quebec. So the Conservative leader would silence his own members who are just going to bat for their own communities. So my question today is, will they vote in favor of a tax holiday? They could defend the interests of Canadians and Quebecers with support for that.
Member for Edmonton Griesbach.
Rents in Edmonton are rising faster than almost anywhere else in the country. A one-bedroom apartment costs 16% more than last year. Working people can't keep up. These sky-high rents are being caused by greedy corporate landlords who own almost half of all purpose-built rentals. But the Liberals refuse to stand up to them, and they've let Canadians down while the Conservatives work to get these CEOs even more. Why are the Liberals standing by while corporate landlords buy up affordable homes?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure and Communities.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, it is incumbent on all levels of government to do whatever they can to help all Canadians, including renters. On our side, what have we done? Lifted the GST costs on the construction of purpose-built rentals. Put forward for the first time in Canadian history a Renters' Bill of Rights to support renters, Mr. Speaker. We also see the need, and unfortunately we don't hear this from the NDP, for more supply. That's why we have cooperated with builders across the country. There's more to do, and we will do that work, Mr. Speaker. I know that the Conservatives will cut every single one of these initiatives. That much is clear, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On November 15th, the Peace Train pulled out of Vancouver Station, and a cross-country trip raising awareness for peace, disarmament, and peacekeeping has now arrived in Ottawa, and they've asked parliamentarians to press this government. Will we reestablish a Centre for Excellence for Peace and Justice that the Pearson Peace Centre used to be? Will we increase our involvement as a country in peacekeeping, in pressing for nuclear disarmament, and for God's sakes, will we give peace a chance?
The Honourable Minister for National Defence.
I want to thank the member from Saanich Gulf Islands for a strong advocacy and for this question. Canada has long been a proud and significant contributor to United Nations peace operations. Most recently, we pledged $85 million over 3 years in continued support of global peacekeeping and peace building. We've also extended and expanded the ELSI initiative to increase the participation of uniformed women in peacekeeping operations. We've renewed our commitment to provide tactical airlift support to UN peace operations, and we're exploring opportunities for Canadian contribution of a quick reaction force. Mr. Speaker, it has been a great source of pride for all Canadians that the Canadian Armed Forces have always answered the call for peacekeeping operations.
And so comes to an end question period. I see a number of people, I'm assuming, rising